The anti-terrorist group has entered the fire pit of Putin's political party, the political party, and the people of Russia. Thank you for watching. A Cold War signal just hit the European border, and it came out not from Moscow, but from Warszawa. On May 22, 2025, the Polish Foreign Ministry suddenly issued an extreme warning that never happened, asking all citizens of this country to leave Russia immediately, by all means possible, without delay. One person did not explain, did not have a gun, did not declare war, but still smelt the smell of hidden guns after each word. No, the war is coming. All Poland is self-sacrificing because of the fear of the Russian government. When a country helps its citizens, such as running away from the storm, is still armed with the best weapons, it is not just a warning, but a proof of war. What is really happening? What has Russia done? And is Warszawa protecting the people? Or is it starting a most dangerous game of the century? Let's take a look at each layer of the face of this lecture. The warning is usually when the police call the citizens back to the country, as if there was going to be a big fire. On May 22nd, an unusual warning was issued from the Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, causing a lot of confusion and concern. In a short message, but very short, Warszawa called on all its citizens to withdraw from Russia as soon as possible, by all possible means, from commercial aircraft, trains, to personal vehicles. The content of the warning is not specific, until a threatening event, but instills in the minds of the public a feeling that the risk of confrontation with Russia is near, as if a devastating disaster is coming. In the official statement, Poland listed a number of reasons to consider it reasonable to vote for this movement. According to direct flights between the two countries, limited during the financial crisis due to sanctions, difficulties when withdrawing money or transferring money from Russia to the homeland. However, the reason being emphasized, and also the most controversial factor, is the forced military occupation of the two nationalists, Poland and Russia. According to the Russian constitution, the second nationality is not recognized, coincided with the fact that those who carry love will be seen as pure Russian citizens, and can be gathered to sleep. If Russia orders this to the president, although there are no signs that show that Moscow is targeting Polish citizens or carrying out oppressive actions, the Warszawa's advice still brings a sense of urgency to the extent that makes the West's opinion immediately shock. Russia does not dare to say that it threatens, does not have orders to keep the order, does not take action, does not block the sea. Everything is going on in a silent and quiet manner. But it seems that only the silence and the principle of Moscow is enough to make Warszawa flourish. Going further, Balin's radical reaction seems to start not from Russia's specific ideology, but from Russia's football, a historical football that captures Warszawa's mind. And when Baskova officially put Balon on the list of unfavorable nations and closed the doors of two hotels in St. Petersburg and Kaliningrad, it became a warning wave. A complete movement in the power of Russia's sovereignty was cleared like a storm, showing that Poland's fear did not need a real war, but only a head-on from the Kremlin. Climbing the armory. When Poland wrapped the armory it was about to fight. Not only in foreign affairs, the country has also recently carried out a full-scale arms race, transforming into a war zone of Europe, with a small scale and speed in the history after the Cold War. Just in the last 3 months, Warszawa has signed a huge defense contract with South Korea, worth more than 6.7 billion, in order to own 180 main-scale tanks, both of which are estimated to be the survival of the modern-day forces. The deal also includes nearly 80 vehicles supporting technology, a full-fledged training course, a limited slot after-sales program, and, in particular, a remote producing technology transmission, allowing Poland to participate in the first time in the modern defense industry. This does not only contribute to the internalization of weapons, but also shows that Warszawa is seeking a new position from its own customers as a regional weapon manufacturer. But that's not all. Currently, Poland has set up a total of 648 K9 and 480 Fa-50 fighter jets. Among them, Korea has released 174 K9 and 12 Fa-50 guns. All of them have been rapidly changed in record time. Some of them have a broken mentality, or more correctly, a mess of strategy from Warszawa. The reason is that it is clear that Poland's intercontinental weapons have almost been cut off. Most of its equipment has been transferred to Ukraine since the war broke out in 2022, and now, in the meantime, it has not been able to re-equip it with the Warsawified internal resources to break through the defense gap. According to the latest report from NATO, Poland is the country with the highest national defense spending in the world in terms of GDP, a 4.7% increase in 2025. the lowest standard of the Union. However, what is worth mentioning is that this large part of the money does not come from the tax money, but is funded by foreign funds, especially from the countries with weapons. The psychological confrontation between the Soviet Union and the Soviet Union is mysterious, from the historical context to the Russian Federation. The Soviet Union, since the 10th century, when Poland decided to follow the Lama religion, Russia became the sixth religion, bifurcating a path that has been paved not only in Germany, but also in the world. Poland looked at the West, hoping to become part of Latin Europe, while Russia built its own monarchy, independent with the West, self-reliant, sometimes cruel, but fierce. Those two paths have put Warsaw and Moscow in a position that never ends, but always cuts by conflict. In the memory of the Russian people, one of the darkest moments was in 1610, when the Polish army conquered Moscow at a turbulent time. Although it was only a short moment, that event was like a momentous cut in Russian history. On the contrary, the Polish people never forgot the tragedy of 1939, when the country was divided in half between Germany and the Soviet Union, a painful memory that is often shown in political performances in Warsaw. From those historical sources, a psychological thing for the first time ever. But what is worth mentioning is how each side dealt with the past. Russia, with a silent political direction and nationalism, chose to be silent. They did not deny the history, but did not instigate it to themselves or attack. Meanwhile, Poland always used the past as a modern political weapon. Any action from the Russian side, whether it was a military deployment in Syria or an exercise in the Black Sea, could cause a red flag. Every time Russia speaks, Poland immediately responds. Every time Russia calls on the army, Poland immediately increases the presence of NATO. And every time Russia keeps silence, Warsaw is more and more worried. So that silence is a sign of a vague conspiracy. Warsaw's anxiety is not only from the actions of Moscow, but also from the existence of Russia as a historical reality outside Western control. Poland, the NATO front, or the military, is replaced on a large scale. No one recognizes the strategic role of Poland in NATO, with the positions of Zaboruz and Karajikarad. The Russian capital is isolated and militarized high again along the western border of Ukraine. Poland, of course, has become the ideal geopolitical landscape for both the West and those who want to go to war. But it is because of that position that Warsaw is not chosen for military or strategic capabilities, but simply because it's in the right place. A beautiful place next to Tongue, a country that has had a long-standing confrontation with Russia, is ready to assert its loyalty. That is the model that Washington is looking for, and Poland does not need pressure, willingly to step into it in a perfect way. Poland is increasingly more familiar with the South and NATO, not only in terms of military, but also in terms of political and media orientation. One of Warsaw's books, from increasing the presence of troops to banning orders to start from a fixed position by Washington and Brussels, but not from a real need or the benefit of the internal nation. Even in the eyes of many analysts, Poland is being pushed up to the top to replace the previous role of Ukraine. When KF, the Soviet Union and the war in Ukraine entered a critical stage, then Warsaw, with new weapons, increased defense skills, and a strong defensive mentality, is chosen to be the next hotspot. But the dangerous thing here is that Warsaw seems not to realize that he is not the center of power, but just a target for the integrity of others. In the battle of NATO, when a good army is defeated, there will be another good army immediately, and Poland, in its show-off, is increasingly becoming the most vulnerable army, rather than a nation with its own strategic sovereignty. In the time when Poland took full force to increase its armed forces, urgently advised the people to withdraw from Russia, and after discussing about an all-out confrontation that was about to happen, on the other side, Russia chose a mischievous attitude, but pushed hard. Not a threat, not a tough declaration, not a grand move. Moscow simply maintained its self-reliance, determined about the principles and laws that have existed for a long time. And the silence of that cold was what made Warsaw feel insecure more than ever. Russia does not need quartet. It does not need a large-scale military force or a large-scale military training on the international front. Just by existing in a steady, unwavering way, Moscow has enough power to make Poland automatically enhance its defense at a record level, build bridges on the eastern border, and demand that the people leave the Russian territory. This is no longer a normal battle, but a psychological war without guns, where silence is the most dangerous weapon. With Poland, every action, including the calmness from the Russian side, has been used as a sign of a great conspiracy But Moscow does not need to prove anything. They understand that self-control and not giving up in a chaotic time is the greatest counterattack. And when the other side keeps rolling up the stairs, but this side still holds the cold wave, then the general really belongs to the quietist. That's why Varsava lost his sleep, not when Russia acted, but when Russia did nothing. The political chaos rose from the Varsava regime, while Poland shows itself as NATO's stronghold before Russia. Right in the heart of Varsava lies a political and social crisis that has never been resolved. The strategy against Russia is seemingly strong, but in fact it is being tarnished by large numbers coming from within the Polish government, from politics, economy to social security. One of the most important issues is the overall crisis, when the number of citizens willing to take a serious nap despite the government increasing the defense budget by nearly 5% GDP. The children of Poland do not want to get involved in a hazy confrontation, especially when prices have to pay, not clear and uncertain in the future. In addition, the contracts to buy weapons worth tens of billions of dollars are largely sponsored by large foreign banks, which are putting a heavy burden on the national economy. Defense debt is growing, while economic growth is not enough to meet the demand, causing the labor market to be strained to the level of violence. Not few experts say that Poland is being hit by a stable team to pursue an undeclared armed struggle. The tension continues to spread to the social psychology. The people of Poland increasingly feel uneasy because of Russia, but because of the increasingly extreme policy and lack of control of the government. They have to live in constant concern about the war, the economy declining, and the increasingly clear diplomatic formation. In that scene, the national security, which used to be a political flag, has now turned into a barbed wire. No longer enough to persuade, when all the rules are pushed to the ground to be closer to the current crisis. And Sawa is deceiving himself before any enemy can shake hands. Historic, chosen, the most dangerous weapon in Varsava. One of the greatest tragedies in the way Poland faced Russia is to constantly ask Moscow to apologize for history, while its own Varsava chose to leave the dark streets because of his old age. From the occupation of the Russian territory in the war in 1920 to the continuation of the anti-Russian alliance during Napoleon's time, and even the open roles in the Russian-backed wars in the post-Cold War period, all were erased from the official list, or be displayed under the gaze of a heavenly sword. Meanwhile, actions from Russia, whether defensive or offensive, have always been targeted by the West and Poland. A military exercise in the Russian territory could be described as preparing for European invasion. A warm foreign statement from Moscow is also likely to be used as a threat. Russia is likely to be the target of the invasion, and Poland, no matter how many hostile policies are applied, still shows itself as the German flag of the historical victim. President-elect Varsrov was a pioneer in imposing economic restrictions, refusing to supply food to Russian citizens. NATO exercise brought the military closer to the Russian border. But when Moscow reacted in the right way and in foreign forces, Poland rose up. If it had just been slain, history, when it was chosen, is no longer a lesson, but a weapon of propaganda. A weapon that Poland is using more and more to justify the policy of 7,000 non-combatants. But even more dangerous is when Poland believes in the things they create themselves. And that is when they become liars in their own historical game. In the end, it made Poland uneasy, not because of Russia's luck, but because of its negligence and lack of strategic direction. They bought weapons to get a sense of security. They built walls to scare us away. But it was all temporary measures, not the international law. A truly strong country does not have to shout every time the neighbors shout. And a country with a leader does not need thousands of tanks to sleep well every night. Russia does not need to attack. They just need to stand still. And that is what makes Poland afraid of Japan. The Kromon mine, a steel mine in the middle of the Black Sea. In the middle of the Black Sea, where there is only wind and industrial mines, there is an invisible monster, a man-made military base in a steel mine called Kromon. It is not simply a gas exploration project. It is an extra force in the entire Ukraine's high-tech war network, where UAVs hit and kill people, as if they were enemies carrying their own throats. Crimea 1, in the Kaitek-Boyurik group, is located in the middle of the Odessa Kremlin and Crimea Peninsula, which Ukraine has secretly transformed into a hot water intelligence base in the middle of the ocean. The Neva radar is attached to the base. The satellite antenna is connected to the control center at Kiev and is attached to the military helicopter. When it is no different from an aeroplane. From here, the V-5 Mongora and the US V-Cup boats can depart, sail through the Russian defense layers, hit the bridge, the rear bases, even close to the Black Sea Fleet. That is why, when Russia launched a counterattack on the night of May 21st, it was not a simple strike, but a straight line, and Ukraine's combat brain. The warships of the Black Sea Fleet fired a series of Kalibr cruise missiles with almost absolute accuracy. Within the previous 10 minutes, this huge circle was burned. The radar system and the contact points were burnt to the ground. A Russian official said, "Not only did we destroy the equipment, but we cut off the wire that connected the entire Ukrainian campaign on the sea." This short but cold sentence ended a long time ago. From now on, Gromwan is no longer Ukraine's cannonball, but a bird's nest in the ocean, marking a strategic turning point in the Black Sea. Magura and Kob, the technology killers that were killed in the night. They used to be the nightmare of the Black Sea Fleet, the UAVs that killed Magura V5 and the USV Kob self-propelled gun. The two technology killers developed by Ukraine, designed to promote sea defense at speed, accurate positioning, and terrible damage. Each Magura can carry a heavy load of up to 300 kilograms, aimed at targets such as steel bullets. During the 2 years of the war, from 2003 to 2024, they have caused the Russian Navy to lose many patrol ships, backup equipment, and serious casualties to transport ships in Crimea. At some point, the Mokura ship had taken up 30% of Ukraine's coastal attack. But what is surprising, that the origin of these missiles is located right on the first base, where Ukraine is likely to become the center of the UAV command between the oceans. It is the place where the radar system, control antenna, and satellite guidance center for all UAV operations along the South China Sea are located. And then, when the Russians hit Rumawan with only a few Kalibr missiles, the enemy missile network, not the other one, collapsed like a tower. The radar was blown up. The reconnaissance system was cut off. The strategic communication channels fell into silence. Ukraine's special forces are operating on the nighttime running track, leaving all control equipment and documents on the fight. Without a starting point, no sign of direction, Magura and the Cap, from the place of the top weapon, now becoming a soulless cave in the middle of the sea. It hit the Crimea, only as a fireball, but also as an accurate and heart-wrenching weapon of the Ukrainian people's warplanes, a fierce, but extremely cold victory of Russia. Khinjan, the baton, is a firefly flying in the middle of the Kiev capital, while the Black Sea is on the brink of a strike. Another tragedy took place in the capital Kiev. The only air defense system that the US has ever helped Ukraine, the Patriot AC-3 MSE, was destroyed by a Russian hypersonic missile. This time, Russia did not warn, not a warning signal, but a blazing flame, a building block, and a block of black paper lying in the middle of the strategic defense center. The weapon created that gap is the Russian Air Force's hypersonic weapon, fired from a high-speed MiG-31K fighter, with a speed exceeding Mach 9. Khinjan flies in a ballistic trajectory from the Binlu level, falling almost vertically, surpassing all normal defense layers. Not only fast, Khinjan is also flexible and almost impossible to be hit by modern air defense systems. This is not the first time the plane has been hit, but in the last 3 months, 2 of the PRC-3 MSE, formerly known as the Free Yellow Flag, have repeatedly turned into rubble under the exact attack of Khinjan. The reason lies in the blind spot in the design of the ANPQ-65A radar. He could not find the targets down from above almost straight. It was exactly the flight route that Khinjan chose to connect. If Patriot was used as a strong shield to cover the Ukrainian sky, Khinjan would be a flamethrower, coming down from the sky, blocking the opponent's heart. The fight not only destroyed an air defense group worth hundreds of millions of dollars, but also destroyed the weakness of the Western defense system. From now on, Patriot is no longer a symbol of unrivaled defense. It has become a symbol of defeat. A yellow leaf was blown away by a Russian iron flame in the middle of the air. And above all, this is a warning that there is no system that is fast enough to hold a super sword from falling from the sky. When the smoke from the explosion in Patriot still remained, the Kiev sky continued to burn, a sleepless night, an unprecedented scale attack from the beginning of the war. And this time, it was not just a fierce attack, but a destructive, targeted strategy, calculated from every string, every frequency. About 900 UAVs from Zidane, closely combined with the Iskander cruise missile and the Khinjan nuclear power plant missile, have been encircled in the besieged capital in a never-before-seen rainstorm. The sky was covered by hundreds of red firecrackers, while the ground was shaking with dozens of massive explosions from the center to the city's outskirts. The target is not just a civilian or a symbol. The target is Ukraine's military-industrial base, western-made UAVs, ammunition storages, ground-based strategic control stations, ATEMs, Giuliani airfields, and KFs. All of them are hit with cold and sharp precision. Not only are they destroyed, but many facilities also explode continuously, creating emergency reactions, causing fire to spread across nearby industrial areas. In particular, a deep base in Ivano-Frankivsk, where it is believed to have been set up by the central government of NATO, with the presence of the British military advisor, who has been slandered by the Russian invaders. Dwarfs have made their way out of the mirror of numerous trees. The ground is shaking like there is an earthquake, and everything is connected to the ground for the first few minutes. The submarine was once seen by the people as a safe tree, but now it has become a mist of smoke. The 100-meter-high black smoke enveloped the sky, while the yellow storm did not stop like a dead-end music that lasted all night. Ukrainian media call it the Shenzhen earthquake, but military analysts see it more clearly. This is the beginning of a project that Russia has secretly prepared for many months. Ukraine, 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 Ukraine. Kiev, Kharkov and Ivano-Frankivsk have been completely wiped out from the military map. These areas are not small bridges, but military industrial centers, where UAVs attack with short-range missiles, aerial vehicles and post-mortem stations for all combat forces. Over the past 3 years, this is the place where the Western Institute of Technology has been invested to maintain the fighting power of Ukraine in all 3 fronts. According to Russian military strategist Alexei Sukhokin, Masukova's strategy is not simply to destroy its own target, but to let the enemy invest, build, expand and put into operation, under a tight circle, when the system is full. That is called breaking up, after cutting a tight curve at the right time. More than 300 UAVs and dozens of anti-aircraft missiles have been used to hit these 6 buildings. Each point is hit from 10 to 20 consecutive fires, causing the steel structure to melt, causing the weapons to explode continuously, and the production lines to be destroyed, unable to recover. The airstrike is not only destructive, but also ineffective to the entire ability to produce Ukraine's war at a sensitive time, when Trump's 50-day letter is counting backwards. Ukraine is not only losing its engine, it is losing its ability to resist in a systematic way. The evacuation of President Zelensky, the history of which is being re-established in Kiev. Among the rumbling sounds, and the blazing flames in the sky of the capital of Kiev, are gushing information like adding oil and fire. Ukraine has planned a secret plan with the name of a ghost. The evacuation of the entire interior of the city, with President Volodymyr Zelensky from the capital. The event that the city is completely destroyed. According to recent sources, the Office of the President of Defense has been set up in the West, and even has a ready-made script to travel to the Bolon territory if all the defenses clash. Ukraine's government data has been maimed and leaked to the US machine system, while all documents are being prepared to be destroyed when there is an order. The plan to get rid of it left many users impressed with the collapse of Kabul in 2021, when the Afghan government, due to US backing, was overthrown for a few days, and the president of this country went up the stairs out of the capital, entering a country that collapsed in the blink of an eye. With Ukraine, the situation may not have reached that level, but the existence of the ghost plan shows that the anxiety is no longer limited in the military battlefield, but deepened in the deepest level of the political crisis and leadership belief. Behind the wall is a powerful system that is ready to run away when the war is out of control. At this time, the question is not whether Kiev has a stronghold, but when the capital is defeated, who will survive? And if it is the leaders who have prepared the way, then which hope is left for the soldiers who are trying to conquer each city? Once again, the carbon cloud seems to be rolling after each bullet in Ukraine. Russia opened the Pandora UAV box, the Alabuga cannon, making the West cold, while Ukraine is destroying the Japanese army that used to be strong after the fierce airstrikes. Russia is calmly breaking out of a cold mentality. Revealed the video from inside the Alabuga UAV. The industrial facility is known as the Pandora's box of the War of Non-Managers, located in the Tatarstan region, more than 1,200 kilometers away. Alabuga is not a small factory, but a huge industrial complex where a series of deadly UAVs such as Zeren, FPV, Lancet, and even a new generation long-range UAV are produced. and thousands of UAVs lined up to complete. All are displayed on the national TV stream in an indelible message. We have entered the period of industrial war. According to Western experts, the production capacity at Alapuga has now surpassed all initial expectations. If before, Russia was only believed to be able to produce a few hundred UAVs per month, that number has increased to thousands. NATO intelligence even warned that under necessary conditions, Russia could completely disperse, at the same time, as 2,000 UAVs in one day. A steel storm that no defense system is strong enough to prevent if it does not want to collapse under continuous pressure. From Alapuga, the birds that are born every day have been and are spreading dreams in Kiev, Odessa, Kharkiv, and even the secret bases that the West is sponsoring. The West calls it a war production, but in Russia, they call it a trade deal. And Alapuga is a symbol of the origin of the war of non-combatants that Russia is opening once and forever. The US claims that the bombings of Russia, as it used to do with Iran, are a threat to the strategic or political balance, while Ukraine's war is rising every now and then. In Washington, a statement was made by a woman who was a member of the Roman family. If Putin wants to know what will happen on Wednesday, call on the Iranian leader. A joke, but a secret is a threat to the MENA Hormuz campaign, when the US uses a Beta stealth fighter to destroy Iranian nuclear facilities at 3 p.m. But Russia is not Iran. Russia does not have a single nuclear power plant. They have a strategic weapon warehouse of more than 5,900 nuclear warheads, along with a multi-story air defense system S-400 and S-500, which are installed all over the weak zone. While the B-2 is a symbol of the US tank, it can still be detected by a low-level radar of Russia, not to mention a slow flight, and lack the ability to move, causing it to be damaged when exposed. The analyst understood that Graham's statement had a psychological nature to serve the internal political game of the United States more than a practical plan. However, in the world of superpowers, speech is never just speech. If Washington pushes the threat game to the limit, what is being hidden under the negotiating table may be something that no one wants. A little reaction that cannot be controlled, a spark for a global conflict beyond all political integrity. And at that time no one can call to ask, as Mr. Coraham once said. The war for the Black Sea is no longer a story between the two countries. It is a battle of technology, geopolitics, and the will to survive between Russia, Ukraine and the West. A burning mine, a third explosion, a wave of UFOs flying in the sky. All are just signs of a big storm coming. The biggest highlight of the day is the Pogrod battleground, where the last Ukrainian anti-tank missile was placed in the southwestern part of Donetsk. And now this government is on the brink of collapse, when the most dedicated units of Russia only 1 kilometer away, the red line for any total attack. Russia has been constantly improving its combat formation every step of the way around Pokrov, despite not having a large-scale force fighting directly. But the way Russia is proceeding shows a strategy to use long-range pressure, artillery, and UAVs to counter the international defense, forcing Ukraine to expand its force and self-divide its formation. In the middle of the day at the Voroshilsk strategic route, just a few kilometers from the center of Pokrov, a military coup took place. 3 Ukrainian soldiers on a light military vehicle were moving, suddenly being infected with a direct attack by the Russians. 2 people ran after 1 person was injured, and only a few minutes later, the Russian UAV appeared from high above, locked the target and managed to completely destroy the vehicle. The event of this small incident was a much bigger deal. The Russian spy has gone deep into the background, even in close proximity to the Pogolub interior, but was not discovered. I can't say this is just a simple observation. This is an indicator that shows that the Pogolub interview is not complete. It may even have been leaked in some weak points. Because of the continuous progress and these investigations, Russia is gradually creating a part-time defense system, and if it is not destroyed by the Ukraine, the Pogorov missile, if it is not destroyed by the Ukraine. While the war in Pokrov is going on, in the northwest direction, another Russian attack has created the biggest threat ever. The Russian Defense Ministry officially announced that the city of Novotorosk-Dnipropetrovsk, located in the middle of the northeast border, has completely fallen into their hands. This is not just a local war. It is a battle of the same kind, in a way that cuts off the supply of weapons of Ukraine to the entire region of Pokrov. The battle at Novotoretsk was a good example of how the Russians used their tactical skills to cover the road and capture the city. At first, they appeared at a few small points in order to prevent the army from retreating from Slovenia and Kostatinivka. After that, when the enemy had not yet been able to respond, the Russians suddenly used their main force to attack the center of Novotoretsk, banning the declaration of liberation. Now, when Novotoretsk is in the Russian hands, the north side of Pokrov is no longer a safe area. The Russian army has been able to maintain a solid defense system, with the deployment of artillery and long-range UAVs, suppressing a total of tens of lines of fire from Sloviansk to Pokrov. It is more important to capture Novotorsk from Tamsat, i.e., the direction of the border, from the northwest, from the southwest, and from the main point of Pokrov, where Russia is oppressing every day. Ukraine, being forced to have a defense force and being threatened from behind, cannot be easily fortified. When the US military was attacked by the 7th Brigade during the siege of Hong Kong, it was difficult to keep the 1st Dukes, and if the Dukes were defeated, the entire eastern part of Ukraine could be destroyed like the domino effect. Russia did not just fight to conquer, they were fighting to lock the battlefield. Mikhail Mikhailovich. While the attention is still on Pogorod and Novotorsk, in southeast Vietnam, a chain of 3 other strategic cities has silenced the owners of the region for less than a day. Miriperi, Mirorica, and Fenitorica. The names that used to be considered as a lifeline in the central defense of Ukraine have once again fallen into the hands of the Russian army. In particular, Mikulika witnessed the most intense moments of the day. From early in the morning, the Russian army attacked, taking over the city center. In the afternoon, the Ukrainian forces counterattacked, taking over a part. But when the night fell, the firepower from the Russian artillery and UAV anti-aircraft guns went down like rain, forcing Russia to recapture the entire central residential area. This is a war that has 3 stages full of tears, but the final results are clear on the part of Moscow. The control of Mikhailovka and the 2 points of contact are Miro, Beirut and Faranorica for Russia's strategic advantage. These areas are not only on the road of blood, leading to the house of Namsapurik, but also surrounded by thick forest, where it is ideal for attacks to capture and repel. By occupying the surrounding high points of Mikulika, Russia has banned a series of strategic routes to open an attack range from the river Vododimidivka to the south. This is a very dangerous shock, because if it succeeds, the Russian army can hit the house of Saxon Zaporizhia and destroy the U-shaped defensive system that Ukraine is building to protect industrial areas. This attack is not only a sign of red on the map, it is also a sign of the connection between Russia and the Soviet Union.